During the WNBA this season, I feel like we sort of had one of those particular growing pains where it's like some of the people that are coming in and watching the sport and are fans of the sport feel like maybe they're there for a weird reason. And now they've found sort of maybe one player to hyper-fixate on that they feel stands at odds with what a WNBA player is in their minds. And they passionately love that player in a way that actually just feels like it's hate being disguised as love that they want to have against the rest of the league. And we sort of had this moment where the rest of the fans had to go like, you paid the same money for your ticket, and you being here is also helpful to the sport. And that's a really difficult thing to do. They had no sort of reverence for the fact that, like, buddy, this conversation's been going on without you for years and years and years. And now you come in here and just think that you can, because you love this one player.
Sue Bird just showed her hand, and honestly, it's embarrassing. Her latest podcast episode made one thing crystal clear. She's building Team USA around Paige Bueckers while shoving Caitlin Clark to the sidelines. The title screams it, the graphics prove it, and the entire conversation confirms it. When the league's biggest draw gets systematically erased from your content, that's not an accident, that's a choice. And now that choice is backfiring spectacularly. So here's my question. How long can you ignore the person who saved your league before everyone notices?
A podcast with Sue Bird and Megan Rapinoe, and the guest was Katie Nolan, and they were talking about the growing pains in the WNBA. And they decided to put out this clip on their Twitter to promote their new episode with Katie Nolan. So this was a choice for the podcast to use that clip to promote their episode. This is not like someone was clipping it out and it went viral. And I actually went to the main episode to kind of watch that clip in its entirety because I just wanted to make sure that nothing was taken out of context. And to be totally honest with you guys, watching the whole clip made the clip that they put on social media that much worse.
Let's talk about what just went down on the Sue Bird podcast, because this situation has officially crossed from questionable to absolutely ridiculous. The episode dropped with a title that tells you everything you need to know. Team USA 2028 forecast Paige Bueckers and the young stars on the ride. Not Caitlin Clark and the future of USA basketball. Not even the next generation takes the court. Nope, Paige Bueckers gets her name in lights while everyone else gets lumped into young stars. Real subtle.
During the WNBA this season, I feel like we sort of had one of those particular growing pains where it's like some of the people that are coming in and watching the sport and are fans of the sport feel like maybe they're there for a weird reason. And now they've found sort of maybe one player to hyper-fixate on that they feel stands at odds with what a WNBA player is in their minds. And they passionately love that player in a way that actually just feels like it's hate being disguised as love that they want to have against the rest of the league. And we sort of had this moment where the rest of the fans had to go like, you paid the same money for your ticket, and you being here is also helpful to the sport. And that's a really difficult thing to do. They had no sort of reverence for the fact that, like, buddy, this conversation's been going on without you for years and years and years. And now you come in here and just think that you can, because you love this one player, and this one player is very good. She's very, very good. And like, I would love to just openly love them. Those are the types of moments that as a women's sports fan, I like really bristle against, where I'm just like, I hate that we have to go through this, but we do have to go through this. This is the growth period.
But wait, it gets better. When you actually watch the episode, they throw up a graphic showing the young intern versus the OG scrimmage, and who's featured in this graphic of young players. Paige Bueckers, Jackie Young, and Angel Reese. Notice anyone missing? Because I sure do. Caitlin Clark, the player who literally transformed the WNBA's attendance numbers overnight, who broke viewership records left and right, who made casual sports fans actually care about women's basketball, somehow didn't make the cut for the visual representation of young talent. That's not an oversight, that's intentional erasure.
For a large group of people, mostly that exist online, it wasn't enough, like, love a player, love Caitlin, love whoever you want to love. But it was simultaneously, they had to then say that every player that ever came before was trash.
Throughout the entire podcast episode, Sue Bird can't stop gushing about Paige, the young intern she calls them, with Paige apparently being the self-appointed leader of this group. Sue talks about how cute it is, how they wanted to break ties in scrimmages, how competitive they were. And look, I've got nothing against Paige Bueckers as a player. She's talented, she's got potential, and she seems like a decent person. But here's the reality check nobody wants to hear. Paige had the third lowest attendance numbers for home games in the entire league last season. You can't manufacture star power. You can't force fans to care. The people decide with their wallets and their attention, and right now they're not exactly breaking down doors to watch Paige play. Sue Bird is out here trying to make Paige Bueckers happen like she's in some basketball version of Mean Girls. Stop trying to make fetch happen, Sue. It's not gonna happen. The fans have already spoken. They've already decided who they want to see. When Caitlin Clark plays, arenas sell out. When her games air, viewership numbers spike. When she's not playing, people still tune in to watch her team because they're invested in her journey. That's organic star power. That's what real impact looks like. But apparently, the WNBA establishment has decided they'd rather force feed us their preferred narrative than acknowledge reality. It's like walking into a restaurant where 45 out of 50 tables ordered tacos, and the manager is desperately trying to convince you that the cheeseburger is actually the best thing on the menu. Sir, the numbers don't lie. The people have spoken, and they want tacos.
Tables ordered tacos, and the manager is desperately trying to convince you that the cheeseburger is actually the best thing on the menu. Sir, the numbers don't lie. The people have spoken, and they want tacos.
You called sports fandom a complex experience. I loved that so much. Do say more about that. What feels misunderstood or oversimplified or uncovered?
Yeah, I think like there's so many aspects of this that we could focus on. Like one of them is sports hate. Sports hate is so unique, I think. And it's also, I feel like, healthy in a world that's full of a lot of hate that's very unhealthy and very bad. I think in general, hate I try to shy away from, but you've got, we're humans, so you have to have all range of emotional experiences. And I think one of the safest places to put your hate is like, dude, I hate the fucking Yankees. I hate them so much. I hate them so much that while I'm doing my job and I meet a Yankee, I'm like, no, I don't want to know you. I absolutely hate you. It's based in nothing. If anything were to happen to that person, I wouldn't want them to suffer. But you're just like, it's safe hate is sports hate.
But if they got traded to the Red Sox, you'd be like, I love you. I love them.
I'd
I
go,
love
give
you
me a
so
second.
much.
I'd go, I don't know, give me a second. But I also feel like in terms of, look, sports fans are men, women, non-binary. Anybody can be a sports fan. I think a lot of sports media caters to a specific male audience. And I also feel like that's a male audience that has not been told that their feelings are something that they can experience. And so I think a lot of the time, men don't even realize how much of an emotional experience being a sports fan is. And so that's kind of part of my thing, is I just want them to feel like, hey, the way that sports make you feel, we can talk through that. So it's just such a weird experience that people who don't love sports don't understand, but that I want to kind of pick apart.
Now let's rewind a bit, because this isn't Sue Bird's first rodeo.
Because this isn't Sue Bird's
disrespecting Caitlin Clark and her fan base. Just days before this Paige Bueckers love fest of an episode, Sue allowed guests on her podcast to completely trash Caitlin's fans. They sat there and let someone paint all of Clark's supporters as toxic, negative people who are only watching for weird reasons. And Sue Bird, along with Megan Rapinoe, just sat there smiling. Not a single word of push, not one moment of, hey, maybe we shouldn't generalize millions of people. Nothing. Here's what makes that moment so infuriating. Sue Bird and Megan Rapinoe built their entire brands on being champions for women's sport. They talk endlessly about growing the game, about bringing in new fans, about making women's basketball mainstream. But when millions of new fans actually show up, suddenly those fans aren't good enough. Suddenly they're here for the wrong reasons? Make it make sense. The guest on that podcast basically said that new viewers feel like they're there for weird reasons, because they're hyper fixated on one player who stands at odds with what a WNBA player is. Let's unpack that loaded statement. What exactly is a WNBA player supposed to be? Because from where I'm sitting, Caitlin Clark is exactly what the league needs. Talented, hardworking, marketable, and genuinely exciting to watch. But apparently, that's the problem. She's too popular. She's too successful. She's bringing in too many fans who don't fit someone's narrow definition of what a real WNBA fan looks like. The cognitive dissonance is absolutely staggering. These same men will blame Caitlin Clark for everything negative in the league. Toxic fans, that's Caitlyn's fault. Physical play getting too rough, blame Caitlyn. Media coverage being unbalanced, obviously Caitlyn's problem. But when you bring up the record-breaking attendance, the massive TV deals, the sold-out arenas, the international attention, suddenly she gets zero credit. Suddenly, it's the league was growing anyway, or it's a team effort, or my personal favorite, lots of factors contributed. The mental gymnastics required to simultaneously blame someone for everything bad while crediting them for nothing good should qualify as an Olympic sport. Let's talk about some actual facts, since feelings seem to be dominating this conversation. Before Caitlin Clark entered the league, most WNBA teams outside of the Aces and Liberty struggled to get 3,000 people in the stands. That's not an exaggeration. That's documented reality. The league was losing tens of millions of dollars annually. Television coverage was minimal. Casual sports fans couldn't name 5 WNBA players if their lives depended on it. The league existed, sure, but culturally relevant, please. Then Caitlin Clark shows up and suddenly Google searches for WNBA related content increased tenfold. Not double, not triple. 10 times more people were searching for WNBA information compared to the previous year. Arenas started selling out. Networks started bidding for broadcasting rights. Merchandise flew off the shelves. The league's visibility exploded. But apparently, according to the guest Sue Bird happily platformed, the WNBA isn't culturally relevant anymore because political narrative shifted. That argument makes less sense the more you think about it. The guest tried to claim that people were only watching a year ago because of political divisions in America, and now that those issues have moved on, the real fans are staying while the fake ones left. Except the numbers completely contradict that narrative. Viewership is still up, attendance is still strong, engagement metrics are still climbing, people are still watching games that don't even feature Caitlin Clark because she built a bridge that brought them into the sport. They came for her, sure, but many stayed for the game itself. That's not a problem, that's literally the best case scenario for league growth. But here's where it gets really ridiculous. The guest on Sue's podcast actually said that fans who are hyper-fixated on Caitlin Clark are expressing hate disguised as love. I'm sorry. So the millions of people buying her jersey, attending her games, watching her highlights, following her career, supporting her sponsors, they're all secretly haters. People are dedicating time, money, and energy to watching someone they supposedly hate. That's the dumbest thing I've heard all week. And I've been on social media, so that's saying something. Nobody watches hours of basketball out of hate. Nobody buys merchandise for a player they despise. Nobody travels to different cities to attend games featuring someone they can't stand. That's not how human behavior works. These fans are genuine. Their excitement is real. Their support is authentic. Dismissing all of that as some kind of veiled animosity is not only insulting, it's strategically idiotic for a league trying to grow its fan base. The speaker in the original source made an excellent point about the mathematics of large fan bases. When you have millions of supporters, even a tiny percentage of problematic people becomes a visible number. If 0.01% of Caitlin Clark's fans are toxic jerks, that's still thousands of people making noise online. Compare that to a smaller fan base where 10% might be toxic, but that only amounts to a few dozen people. The raw numbers make the larger fan base look worse, even though proportionally they're better. This isn't unique to Caitlin Clark. Every major athlete deals with this. LeBron James has hits fans. Tom Brady had toxic fans. Taylor Swift has toxic fans. It comes with the territory of being massively popular. Speaking of toxic fans, the guest shared his personal experiences receiving death threats from multiple fan bases, including Caitlin Clark fans, Angel Reese fans, and Lynx fans. That's genuinely terrible, and nobody should have to deal with that. But here's the thing, he acknowledged that toxicity exists across all these groups, yet the entire podcast conversation focused on painting Caitlin's fan base as uniquely problematic. That's the bias showing, that's the agenda being pushed. If you're gonna call out toxicity, call it out everywhere equally. Don't single out one player's supporters while giving everyone else a pass. And by the way, Sue Bird conveniently forgot to mention that she's literally in charge of Team USC. She's the one building rosters, making decisions, setting the tone. So when she platforms someone who's essentially calling Caitlin Clark's impact a problem, and when she titles her episodes to specifically highlight Paige Bickers while erasing Caitlin from graphics and conversations, she's not just being biased, she's actively using her position of power to shape a narrative that diminishes the league's biggest star. Think about the timing here. Caitlin Clark has appeared on Sue's podcast multiple times. She gave up her valuable time during All-Star Weekend to be on their show. She's been nothing but professional and respectful towards Sue in the USA basketball program. And this is how Sue repays her, by allowing guests to trash her fan base and blame her for the league's problem by building marketing campaigns around Paige Bickers while pretending Caitlin doesn't exist. That's not just unprofessional, that's personal. The young intern versus OG scrimmage story that Sue told would have been the perfect opportunity to highlight multiple young players making an input. Nope, Paige Bickers got mentioned by name repeatedly. Other young players got generic references. Caitlin Clark got completely ignored despite being right there at the camp. The message is clear. Sue has decided who the future of USA basketball is going to be, and she's going to use every tool at her disposal to make that vision reality, regardless of what the actual fans want or what the performance numbers show. Here's the reality that nobody in the WNBA establishment wants to admit. They're terrified of Caitlin Clark's power. She's too big, she's too influential, she doesn't fit neatly into the narrative they've been building for years. She attracted fans who don't necessarily care about the social and political stances that the league has centered its identity around. And worst of all, she did it without asking permission or following the traditional path of paying dues and waiting her turn. Historically, WNBA rookies, especially guards, rode the bench regardless of their college accomplishments. You were supposed to shut up, learn from veterans, and maybe get some playing time in your second or third year. Caitlin Clark completely obliterated that expectation. She came in and immediately became one of the best guards in the league. She didn't wait her turn, she didn't defer to veterans, she just went out and dominated, and the fans loved every second of it. That disruption of the established order is what really bothers people. Sue Bird spent her entire career as the face of the WNBA alongside players like Diana Taurasi and Breanna Stewart. They built the league's foundation, and nobody's taking that away from them. But instead of celebrating that their hard work created a platform where someone like Caitlin Clark could elevate the sport to new heights, they're treating her like a threat. They're acting like her success somehow diminishes their legacy. It doesn't. If anything, the fact that the WNBA survived long enough for Caitlin Clark to have this impact is a testament to what Sue and others built. But ego and insecurity are powerful things. Sue Bird made her choice, and the receipts are everywhere. While she's busy trying to force Paige Bickers into Caitlin Clark's spotlight, the rest of us are watching the league's biggest star get systematically erased from the conversation. The irony, she's doing it on a platform that only matters because of the growth Caitlin brought. If you see through this nonsense, smash that like button and subscribe for more real talk.